Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay, so I figured that since today's the presidential debate, I thought would touch on what the book talked about on chapter 9 and chapter 11. Basically, when it comes down to campaigning and also ethics. I would agree that a persuasive campaign consist of messages that's going to be aimed to changing the beliefs and views of others. I think, and I'm gonna keep talking about tonight's debate because I'm excited and kind of eager to hear what both candidates have to say, how they're going to persuade individuals and their thinking, especially all the stuff that's going on in the United States. I know I have that. If I could, I would love to ask the candidates. However, hopefully the right questions are going to be asked today. With that said, I believe a successful campaign or debate for today for both candidates is going to be it's always going to be on our ethical issues, of course, what's going on here in the United States, what's going on in the Middle East, and how they plan on bringing in those two regions. I'm also, what the book talked about was attitudes. And one thing I'm eager to see tonight is Hillary Clinton's attitude and, of course, Donald Trump's attitude and how they react to these touchy subjects that hopefully are going to be touched on today. I know as a police officer, I know there's a lot of key things and a lot of key issues that need to be addressed and that need to be fixed, especially right now in the United States. Called for some of the stuff that's going on with these riots. I get everybody has their views, their beliefs. However, when it comes down to ethics, to destroy a city, that's unethical, wrong. And I think as a nation, I think as us taking these classes, we're going to be the leaders. We're going to be the ones that are going to have to come up with the answers to try to fix these issues going on in the United States right now. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
All right. I were thinking about ethics and public leadership. I just automatically go to morals and thinking about an individual's morals, kind of how sound they are or how unsound they are. Just as far as different leadership styles or different leaders you might encounter, I think that their morals come into play with whether I agree with what they do ethically or whether I think it's not ethically right. I don't know if I said that in a weird way, but I know my morals can be different from a coworker's morals or beliefs, and that can have a direct effect on how I act even as an employee. So when I think of a public leader or even thinking about the debate tonight and our election this year, just knowing that how much their morals are going to come into play as far as ethics as well. Man, I'm not making much sense, but I think just basically for examining what ethics is in public leadership, you look to their morals for that, or you look to their beliefs for that. I feel like even just with people you meet day to day or your friends, it's likely that you agree with what they think, whether you think it's right or wrong, based off their morals and their beliefs, how they were raised, comes into play with that. Where they grew up will affect that too. But I know in our reflections for the chapters we just read, it got me thinking about the movie Les Miserables, which some people seen, some people haven't, or the book, whichever you prefer. But it I was thinking a lot about how things can be honorable or dishonorable. And then there's also that, is it right or wrong? Because things can be right or wrong by the law, but they can be honorable or dishonorable by kind of a different standard. So like in that movie, Jean Valjean, one of the main characters, steals a loaf of bread to feed his nephew. So he's taking care of his family, which a lot of people would agree, you know, that's not something that should be done. Anyone would do it to take care of their family. But since it's stealing, that's not right. So just those kind of thoughts came into my mind when reflecting on this stuff, I guess. Okay. That's all.
Chapter 11, I really like. I'm huge on ethics and morals. And I think we can all relate. Probably a very common leader who was very unethical was Adolf Hitler. The textbooks hits on him a little bit, talking about how he was a leader and leaded a country into doing unethical stuff. Last year, there was an incident that happened here in the city of Fresno. Our assistant chief, the second in command for the department, was arrested for trafficking drugs. It was a huge incident. The textbook talks about that as leaders and ethics, and I want to just read a little sentence because it hit home for me. And it says, executives must act as moral persons and as moral managers. As moral managers, they behave ethically while carrying out their leadership duties. They are viewed as honest, concerned, and principled individuals who make fair decisions. They promote ethical conduct and followers by modeling desired behavior, putting equitable policies in place, and putting equitable policies in place and reinforcing moral behavior. So ideally, especially as us as police officers, we're supposed to be the role models for the ethics and leadership. I mean, we're not all leaders in the department, but in the community, we're all seen as leaders, especially when you have an assistant police chief who was arrested for moving drugs. I mean, that was a huge issue. And then Daniel and I'm sure, can relate to being leaders in our community. People see the police officers as the leaders. As soon as we show up to our scene, we make the decisions. We control everything. That's our scene. We're doing everything. And if we're out there making unethical decisions, that's only going to add to the fire that our nation is going under right now with all this bad media coverage that the news is giving police officers. Most of us got into this job to protect the innocent for the good. You know, are there bad apples? Absolutely, like there is in every profession. But I think overall, us as police officers are leaders and are ethical. And I'm done.
That makes me want to totally change what I was going to talk about, but I won't. I'm going to add to that, though, because that's an issue that really bothers me right now, is what you guys are going through. Did I interrupt you?
No, I was done. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What's happening to the officers and the other side of it, people acting so violently and unethically, it just breaks my heart, because of course you guys didn't get into that business to hurt people, but to protect people, and it is blown out of whack, and it breaks my heart all the time. But let me go back to this. My take on this was more, I just finished an ethics class, and we went into really a lot of depth about the philosophers that had the different theories on ethics. And Cantonian ethics is more theory on that what we would want everyone to make the same decision that we're making. Like any decision that we make, that they are judging it against a decision that someone else would make. And if they would agree with that, then they feel that that's an ethical decision. And then Bentham and Mill were more utilitarian philosophers, and their theory was that they make decisions ethical based on the greater good of what's best for all people. And then John Rawls, who I'd never heard of before, had two legs of his theory. And this was a little bit interesting because it's not really what we look at, I think, right now in the U.S. is, well, part of it we do, but that all people deserve to have the same rights, and that instead of the greatest benefits should be equally distributed to everyone, or as in Bentham and Mill, talking about making a decision that is best for the most amount of people, although it may not be ethical for the smaller amount. his take on it is that the greatest benefit should go to the least advantaged members of society, which is kind of an interesting take when you look at like the distribution of wealth in this country and how few people own the majority of all the wealth in this country. And I don't know, it's just a thought that I had, that it is skewed in this country. I mean, I'm not preaching one or another, but it's just a thought that I had, that usually we don't put the greatest benefit towards the people that need it the most. And then the virtue ethics, which I think is what most of you are talking about more so, is the idea that people with high moral character tend to make the most ethical choices. And I believe that to be true. I mean, when you look at, but unfortunately, people don't always make decisions based on, or they don't have the intrinsic ethical moral compass. So they make decisions based on selfish needs or fear or a whole bunch of other things. But it is a very interesting, today is going to be a very interesting debate, and it makes me troubled for the future, because I don't feel like really any candidate that I've ever voted for, I could truly put all my faith in, thinking, oh, this is a great ethical leader, because there is so much corruption in Washington and throughout everywhere.
That brings us to, did I interrupt you?
Sure.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
I kind of agree with that. And
did you freeze?
Rounding it all up, I guess, I'm thinking that what you're saying, like, ethics is kind of like a cultural thing. People base their ethics on how they were upbringed, how they were brought up and how they were raised, or how, what influences in their society has made them come to develop those ethics. And I think that's really important, especially, with the debates and with the example that you gave, even Samantha, with the movie and with the police officers. We all kind of base our ethics on how we treat others, on how we were brought up. And it's very important to think about that ethics is that servant mentality of being a public leader and thinking about how we can treat each other ethically and not taking advantage of any vulnerabilities in each other, but actually using those, like the things that we see in each other to make them become better people and as leaders, instead of seeing how we can benefit like the whole. And that's what we hope with our presidential candidates tonight, and that we can see how they are going to help us as a community and as a nation to become better people and become better for our children and for everybody that we affect, like, on a daily basis. Our roles of leadership in our days between Julie and Samantha and I, seems much more insignificant maybe in one sense than you, Daniel, and
Jacob.
Jacob. Sorry, Jacob.
Okay.
Guys, because
Okay.
you have there's so much more responsibility in one sense of what you guys have, but everybody has a high calling of values and responsibility to one another to treat each other ethically. And I think that's one thing we can take home from that. And if we each and everyone remember that daily, then it's going to make it a better place, right?
Absolutely.
I think we're coming up on the 15-minute time limit here, pretty close.
All right, you want me to stop it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Does anyone-
Let's all hope the most ethical candidate wins, eh?
That's right.
I agree.
Okay, guys, thank you.
Thanks. See you next week, guys.
Bye, guys.
Have a good week.
All right, guys.